Here's Shed. Off the window, no. Roberts tried to get it. Shed for the win. Got it. Jamal Shed plays the hero again.
Back to pass. Donovan Smith. Smith steps up in the pocket, unloads it, throws it all the way downfield into the end zone. Tipped, and it is caught. Caught by the Cougars. Caught for a touchdown. Unbelievable. Caught by Stephon Johnson.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott and Holm podcast, back here on the premium feed for what I think are Bobby and I's favorite kinds of episodes here, talking about a Cougar football win, instant reacting. I think it was about 90 minutes ago, the Cougars, via a Jack Martin 42-yard field goal, won this one. There are no ugly losses right now for Cougar football, and you saw this team show a lot of fight. That wasn't me taking a backhand swipe at this one.
No.
It wasn't easy to get there, but we knew it wasn't going to be easy to get there. And you're not going to always see it week in, week out. The program's not there yet. You don't have, it's year one of a staff that you didn't bring in to do a quick build. But like every so often, you see proof positive that this is why Willie Fritz was brought in here. And it was a culture win. At the risk of sounding cliche, it was a culture win. Bobby, you were there for the third time this season. You got to see the Cougars in person, though, for the first time. You got to see it in the friendly confines of the last year of TDECU, as it's currently dubbed, stadium. How did you enjoy that? And just what were kind of your first notables from actually being there in the flesh? I like that. You get a different experience watching on TV. Some stuff you get better, but there are some stuff that you just cannot replicate from the watching experience from being there live like you were. So how was all that, friend?
Dude, it was awesome. Just anytime you watch the Cougars win, it's fun. To do it at home, really fun. I know I talked a lot about how much fun it is winning on the road when we play TCU, but it's really fun doing it at home too. But Sam, you were gracious enough to give me your tickets and parking for the game because Sam is a good Cougar alum and he buys season tickets every year. So it was Dustin and I, former, there you go. Pat yourself on the shoulder, bud. Dustin and I decided to take in the game together along with friend Bill, and then actually kind of fun. I don't know if you saw Dustin's picture on social media, but we were joined by two other former Coup Crew members, so we had a little mini Coup Crew reunion there. So
it won't be of interest to the listeners. Let me see who it was. I'm just for my own curiosity. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, and so they ended up coming in the second half of the game, but something that was kind of fun, quote unquote fun, was the section that your seats were in were kind of Utah dominant tonight. There was probably
it's always rough for the visiting fans if there's a decent amount in that section. That's the one thing I don't like about them.
Yeah, it was like great seats, by the way, like upper row, so you don't have to get a stadium seat. You can just lean on the concrete. Great choice there, bud.
That's why I'm not getting, because it's like you can stand up, you can sit down, got a pretty good view. It's less than 500 for 2 tickets.
Yeah, and you're in, and I'm pretty sure you're like on the 35, 40. Like the next section over, Bill was saying tickets jumped up like exponentially more expensive because that's considered the midfield seats.
That's why I took that one. I was like, what's the closest one to a good stuff while keeping me in a lower price tier? But let's not blow up Sam's spot here.
Anyways, but there were a lot of Utah fans and some younger fans weren't like in your face, like getting in your face obnoxious, but they were loud, obnoxious, cheering on their team, that kind of stuff. And, they kind of walk in and I was like, hey, I remember my first Coke, right? Like I remember my first Coca-Cola instead of I remember my first beer because, Utahs are Mormons and they can't do that kind of stuff. So that was kind of fun. And then winning the game, getting to just scream, y'all thought y'all were going to come into this conference and dominate it and you lost to us. Like, what are y'all doing? Like, this has got to be rock bottom for you guys. Like, this is bad for you guys. But, as much as in our private conversations, I kind of crap on the band a little bit. It is good to hear them and see them and that kind of stuff, and getting to see the fanfare and the H magically appearing despite our jokes that we make every week with it. Kind of tongue in cheek a little bit because it's the same thing every year. It's still good to see at times. They did introduce something that I think is the worst thing that the band has ever done, and that says a lot coming from me.
I do not know what this is. I'm dying to hear this.
It was called the Houston Shuffle. And basically, they're playing one of the songs. I can't remember which one. But the Houston Shuffle is the band members go right foot out, left foot out, crisscross, and then they play.
Isn't that the cha-cha slide?
No, because they go right foot they like kick it, right? So it's like if this is their feet, this is great for an audio medium here, but they kick the right foot out, then they kick the left foot out, and then they crisscross, and then they're done. And then they play their song. And it happened, and I just kind of looked at Dustin and Bill, and I go, what the fuck was that? Like, what are we doing?
But just so it's clear though, we mostly love you, Spirit of Houston. Frankly, as we are still not close to full capacity on these games, I appreciate having people in the crowd that give a shit, and they most certainly do that pretty consistently.
Yes,
and just also I have this. It's not technically it's the pep band,
it's
but
really not the band.
The,
it's one person in particular.
One band leadership person. We'll just leave it at that.
Who I may or may not have gotten into.
A Burt of men, if you will.
Who I may or may not have gotten into it when I was in college once or twice. So, I may have had words with that Burt of man.
Love that you have that, as I say, you have that, and also, I'm not going to say like actual beef, but like we'll say tangential beef with a certain former, very popular among the U of H fan base, former Welsh chemistry professor who hasn't been at U of H for 10 or so years.
Yes,
I love that. I love that you have specific.
Absolutely,
again,
I do.
Not serious, but tangential beef. But really, really strong effort in terms of. You saw multiple points. Utah had a chance to take over this game. Like Utah having the ball at 14-7 in the latter stages. Like you didn't see any quit from these guys, and like it wasn't pretty, but we knew that any remotely possible win against Utah was going to have to be with this roster as presently constructed. You were going to have to ugly it up. You were going to have to.
Yep.
You were not going to be able to win pretty against this Utah team, because as bad as their offense has been, as much as we have and will continue to laugh at Utah being this preseason disappointment, and just that fan base being like, because that's such a funny reversal of me thinking that, okay, I'm just going to not be able to resist taking BYU specific shots, and really after having some amount of time with both schools in this league, though more with BYU, being like, oh yeah, BYU fans are way. I would so much rather hang out with the BYU fans than the cross section of you. There's plenty of cool Utah fans, I'm sure. Like I still, even as annoying as their online fan base presence is, probably plenty of cool Utah fans out there. Like any online representation is going to skew to the most annoying or the most vocal or the most something. Present company probably included at least somewhat in there. I know, me couldn't be, but like, yeah, just it is extra satisfying, because I think, to get to my meandering point here, that defense was still as good as advertised. Like that is just some of the hardest hitting opposing defense like I've seen out there. It felt like anytime we got a big play, it was just like, oh man, like we did something here. Even before we won this game, and there were some disappointing things. Like you hate to be as close as you were on the two different 4th and goals that you didn't convert, both of them inside, I think, the 2-yard line.
Really
one inside the 1. Like that's not great. But the fact that you
will say, just one thing you can say there though, you don't convert, but that does lead to your touchdown.
It does. Like Utah isn't pinned deep in their territory, which is maybe part of the decision calculus there. And like, as a general decision also, like if this is a year where you're trying to build culture here, like it's not like you're not trying to win games. Like Willie Fritz isn't out there doing 2013 Astro stuff where it's just like, okay, like we just need to have the roster be as cheap as possible. We're just tearing this thing down to the studs. Like he's still trying to win football games. Like that much is absolutely clear. But like, I want this to, in the long term, be a 4th and short, we go for it kind of program. Maybe I think you adjust like what you do in those situations, and I think like ask yourself honestly, can we bully Utah in that situation? Probably not. In the first situation, should Zion Chris have been a little more deliberate, like not rushing to like, you're not gonna be able to rush to the line and catch this opposing defense off guard. That's just not something realistically that's gonna happen. you tighten up how you execute there. But I think the decision, I'm good with that. Like even if I have,
we actually one of the guys, Ryan was like, you should have kicked at least one of them, and we were like, yeah, but
I'm with
you don't get
Ryan, but
I don't think you should have kicked one of those field goals there. I think both times in the one, you got to go for it there. You got to go for it fourth and goal from the one. And yeah, do I like necessarily the play call? I mean, you'd like to see them punch that in there, but I would rather go for it. If you're inside the 5, fourth and goal from inside the 5, I think you should go for it. Because if you don't go for it, Dustin pointed this out when we were having the discussion with him, that this is actually a 4-point swing and you lose 4 points, right? Because if you kick the field goal there, you get 3, and now Utah has a full drive, and maybe you don't get that opportunity at that touchdown with the short field. Maybe you kick the other one, but at that point you just, and honestly, as somebody, you're somebody who loves advanced statistics and looking at that,
and they would always say
there's no statistic there. There is no. The book will never tell you to not go for it there. You hadn't driven the ball except for the 2 drives where you were down there, and you go for that there. You back them up. You pin them back. Worst case scenario, you give them the ball at the 1, and you almost got a safety out of one of them. And the other one, you ended up giving up a first down or 2, but you didn't actually shoot yourself in the foot that badly. So I think it's easy to second guess it when he doesn't make it, right? But if you score a touchdown on either one of those, you're losing your mind and you're going, yeah, what a great play there. So I don't disagree with the call to go for it there. If he doesn't go for it, I think I get mad there. Anytime fourth and inside the 5, because 5 yards, the 15 yards is how far back a punter goes. If they're at the 3, you got a short punt. He doesn't get his run up. You can bring people, you can do things like that. So for me, inside the 5, I think you always go for it.
Yeah, if nothing else, like I said at the top, I want this to be a program where that's the default. That's what the staff wants to generally do, is go for it in that situation. So even if it doesn't work, it still tells me that Willie Fritz is making the right big picture decision, because that's his job in real time. He's not out there calling offensive plays. He's not out there calling defensive plays. He's not really out there coaching up guys on technique and stuff. And that's not a knock. That's not the head coach's job. The head coach, that's your position coach's job. That's your coordinator's to some extent job. That's not his. It's to make the big picture decisions. And I was happy with those big picture decisions. The execution and play calling, maybe less so, but if we weren't doing it there, yeah, I think you wonder maybe why you're being so conservative specifically there. So no, I like I said, I'm fine with it. It was just more like in a game that was such a close margins game, you just think, man, if we just had 3 more points,
it'd be great, right? Yeah. But you know what else would be nice? Oh, if we had 7 more points, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so you have that opportunity there.
No doubt.
You give up the chance you give up the 3. And honestly, a field goal from that close from a hash isn't always an easy kick for a kicker. You would think, right? A 27-yarder from a hash, you got to get that over pretty quick. It should be a guarantee. Most kickers in college are going to be a guarantee, but anything can happen on that, just like anything could happen on the 4th and 1 from the goal line there.
Yeah, I thought if you want a really exciting big picture takeaway from this game, for me, I think it's the performance you got from your running back, Tam. Your 2 freshmen there, Jamarian Burnett and Rashawn Sanford, 24 carries, 153 yards. That's a good stat line against any opponent. I don't care if it's even it's Rice or insert name of one of the lesser teams in your schedule. I'm excited about that. This is an offense where I think you have to take that kind of performance and be excited about against anyone. Utah might be the best defense we've seen this year. I am no less convinced that they're a good defense now than I was at the start. I'm not just saying it because U of H had some offensive success. That's a good defense. We
only had 61 yards passing.
It is. Yeah, it is. That is the case. We'll say nice throws by Z on both touchdowns there. And I think the one interception he had was
not his fault.
Not his fault. About the most on your receiver interception that you're going to see out there. Maybe not perfectly on target, but one that I'm sure if you gave him true serum, Stacey Sneed would say that he should catch every time, and is pissed that he didn't. catch it. But that you have these two very different freshman running backs that I think you can start to see like, okay, long term, we've known it from basically the moment Fritz is hired. The goal here is to have this be a run first offense that can successfully do that. Ultimately, I think you'd probably want to have a more robust passing game than the one that you're able to mostly do on a week in, week out basis. But also, Utah's a bad opponent for this. Utah is going to be an extremely difficult defense. Like saying making any kind of value judgment on the passing offense against Utah, I think is harsh. Like your passing offense only produced 61 yards, but did produce 2 touchdowns, 2 well thrown balls by Zion Chris on both of them. So yes, 61 yards is 61 yards. I'm not going to put too much lipstick on a pig. Also, and I'm salty about this, it's not a play of like real significance to this game, but I thought Malik Carr should have had a 40-something yard reception that was called back due to a holding that I guess now that the whole game is done, we didn't see any other holding calls on either team. So it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe to the official that saw it much closer than I did, Tank Jenkins did do a hold so blatant that he felt the need to get out his flag. But I thought that was a nice play that I wish still counted. I wish counted for Malik Carr this year. A guy who I don't know, I haven't been able to really use him as much, but the times he gets the ball, you're like, oh man, this is a 6'6" dude in space that can run a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like that'd be so exciting if we could get that going on a week in, week out basis. Really, really nice touch on the first ball to Stephon Johnson. From what I could tell from texting you guys, you did have a decent view because that was the end. That's the end zone that my seats are close to. I weren't sure where you were.
That ball was perfect.
Specifically, he threw it perfectly.
That touchdown throw was perfect.
Like
you could.
All respect to Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith has not made it throw that pretty this year. Maybe the one to Manjack at Oklahoma.
That's what I was
in the
about to say.
conversation.
That play was nice.
It was nice, but it was just perfect touch.
The difference was one was covered, one was not.
Exactly. Yeah.
He put. And the beautiful thing about that throw is there was no way the Utah defender was going to defend it. It was either going to be a Stephon Johnson touchdown or it was going to be an incomplete pass.
And what do we just not shut the fuck up about on here?
Exactly.
Put it where either your guy can get it or no one can get it.
Yep. Exactly. So it was a great throw. The offense, you look at the numbers and you go, ooh, that's actually not that good. But then you look at the defense that they played and,
228 rushing yards, man. 228 rushing yards against this Utah defense. That's good. That's legit reason to be excited.
And the other thing that was kind of exciting for me, it felt like we had some drives, right? Like we actually had some sustained drives, and I'm kind of going through the play-by-play here. You have the field goal to end the game. You have a 10-play, 85-yard drive. 10 plays, 85. Sam,
Mwah.
Do you hear me?
I'm doing the chef's kiss. Mwah.
10 plays, 85 yards. That
gorgeous.
We haven't done that all year.
I think maybe
we did
Rice,
it against Rice.
But caveat, it's Rice.
Right? And then you have the interception. You're driving there, 4 plays, 24 yards. You're driving there, right? You have the three plays for negative 14 yards with the big fumble. But then you have another one where it's a turnover on downs. Doesn't look great on paper, but 5 plays, 58 yards. I love it. Like, I'm sorry, I do. I like that. You have a punt where you picked up a first down. I know that seems like such a lame goal to have, but 7 plays, 13 yards. It's not a ton, but you just saw...
Gave your defense a breather. Like, that's not nothing.
Yes. Yeah. The one of the fumbles that we had. 6 plays, 28-yard drive. Like, hell, the first drive, you go 6 plays, 26 yards. You're seeing them pick up first downs, and it just felt like there were drives where you're like, okay, that wasn't too bad. Okay. We mentioned this after the TCU game. You can start to see what this offense is trying to do. Would I like to see them throw the ball and maybe get the ball downfield a little bit and keep the defense honest? Yes, obviously I would. But you can start to see what we're trying to accomplish here. You can see that this team is starting to understand, and you can see this is a young team. To your point, your leading two rushers are freshmen. You can just see. I was listening to a podcast that we listen to, another one that you should listen to after us every week, obviously, called Split Zone Duo, and they're big college football guys. All right, like that's their profession. And they were like, we love what Houston's doing. Like, obviously it's ugly right now, but you're seeing building blocks. And, I kind of listened to it and I was like, you know what? They're right. You are seeing building blocks right now. Again, your two leading rushers in a game where you rushed really well were your freshman running back. And that's really exciting.
I think this was your best performance from your offensive line. Not that it was perfect. Like, there were times where Zeon Chriss had to escape pressure. Like, it is, and I want to say, being the best performance of this season, it's a low bar to clear.
Better. I think TCU was better.
But this is okay, in terms of...
But it is a better defense.
I was going to say, in terms of, like, the effectiveness, yes, 100%. Like, you did more offensively against TCU. Like, you moved it more. Like, by any measure, eye test, advanced stats, TCU is a better offensive performance. I totally accept the premise of that. I'm saying if you factor in the opponent as well, if you factor in...
That's fair.
That Utah has a much better defensive, or that Utah has a much better tackling team than TCU, that Utah had multiple games of tape on Zeon Chriss. I think that's probably the most important thing, is that TCU, they knew Zeon Chriss and Donovan Smith, at least they thought coming in, probably were going to both take snaps. That was just coming off the Iowa State game where, Jesus, it felt like every other series they were flipping them out. Didn't know it was going to be Zeon Chriss. A Zeon Chriss book that was like way more expansive than anything they let him do at that point. So you had an element of surprise against TCU. And not that I'm that worried about this season's results. This is, again, a culture building season, and anything you get from this season is a nice bonus. And you just want to see this team be a better football team at the end of the season than they were at the start, which we have a whole full month of the season to go. So not a complete data set, but this is definitely a better team now in late October than it was week 1 against UNLV. Like, you're seeing the kind of steady improvement that I don't know if you ever really saw against quality opponents under Dana Holgorsen previously. But I would say 4 tackles for loss the entire game from the Utah defense. Like, some of that is Zeon Chriss being able to escape some tough situations. Like, he had a 8, I can't remember if it was an 8 or 10 yard run. Don't know why those numbers standing out to me in the first half, where it felt like he ran like 20 something yards to get there. You probably know the play I'm talking about. He just did an unbelievable escape job to get there. Was watching it with a friend who's a college football fan, but not like a U of H fan so much that I got him cheering for the Cougs. And he was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe. I thought it was just like, okay, just get back to the line of scrimmage and maybe get a couple. The fact that he got the first, I believe, from that run. So yeah, some of that is Zeon Chriss magic. I'm not saying that the offensive line, it's fixed. This is above average offensive line, but like, this Utah defensive front, as good as they are, 0 sacks allowed, 4 tackles for loss allowed the entire game. That, after the way Kansas just beat your ass at the front, let's be straight up about what the previous game was. To bounce back like that, to see that film and to have the pride to go out there and say, not again, we're going to do better this time, and to give your offense the support, the base of support they needed to actually do enough to rush for 200 something yards, like point blank. Like, and credit to Jamarian Burnett, credit to Rashawn Sanford. They did some very good running. They had some nice holes to run through more often than we've seen before. The fact they were able to even occasionally get holes to run through. This was by 52 yards, Bobby. This is the most anyone has rushed on the Utah defense this year. Like, that was a good performance. And obviously you give the backs credit. We name checked them a bit earlier, but you have to give your offensive line credit there as well. Like, it's been a tough season. It's been up and down one. I'm not saying that I expect this offensive line to go out this last month of the season and turn into bulldozers. Like, that doesn't at all add up to what we've seen the total of 8 games, but that you're seeing something better after, week one being a turnstile, heck, last week being a turnstile. It's good to see the guys have some pride and bounce back there.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we haven't been able to critique them on in the season is a lack of care or effort. That is not what I was trying to imply at all.
No, I know.
It absolutely is great that they bounced back from the game and and from their bad performances and have come up really, really big in some games. Just for me, again, I totally get what you're saying against the competition. I just thought TCU, we looked better. We were much more effective, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, both performances that give you some long-term hope, both performances that make you think that you don't necessarily have all the pieces here. Although, again, you have some good ones. Like, I'm gonna miss the hell out of Keith Cooper when he's gone. Like, he's been mostly awesome this year, and I think another unit that really needed to bounce back, because Kansas's offensive line, quite frankly, kicked your butt last week. They rushed for over 200 yards, by far the worst performance by your defensive front last week. You bounce back, and it wasn't always easy. Utah did have some moments where they ran the ball pretty well, but you never saw those guys give up. You saw them step up at key moments. Made it really, like Latravian McCutcheon, somebody who we mentioned last episode. Unfortunately for the penalty on the opening play of that game, he goes out there this week, makes a game-changing play, forces the fumble, lands in Keith Cooper's arms, and he puts the Cougar offense in good position with a nice return there. Like, really,
we were laughing in stadium. We were like, is that a fumble or is that an interception? What are we marking that as? We're excited for it, but what was it again?
Yeah, exactly.
I saw it ended up being marked a fumble. So
yep. But yeah, that was
a funny. That's one of the things about the in-game experience. Like, you get the in-game experience, but little things like that, like, you're kind of like, wait, what happened there? Okay, why is he not playing? Like, what happened with Wilson? Why was he pulled? Ineffectiveness or injury?
So I thought so, and I didn't realize this until the very end of the game. I thought it was injury, and who knows, maybe a day or two. But like, from the post-game comments that Kyle Whittingham, the Utah head coach, gave, they wanted a spark. And quite honestly, not that Wilson was perfect out there. When I heard that, I was like, really? Like, you pulled the guy who's occasionally like making a play. Because like their other quarterback did not have the juice. Like, looked like a guy who would never take an individual snap. Looked like someone with no confidence. Looked like someone who, quite frankly, okay, like, I get now how Isaac Wilson was the number 2 quarterback there when Cam Rising went down. I get why they wanted to like look at him first. Yep. Because like the other guy was just, other than occasional pass here and there, clearly he was not giving you any kind of threat. U of H could start selling out against the run a bit more, and I think you saw the Utah defense get markedly less effective. Not that it was great when Wilson was in. I'm not trying to overstate how well he did, but like, if I was a Utah fan right now, I'd be drinking bleach, but in between sips of bleach, I would be like, okay, but like, why did you pull it for a guy who has never thrown a college pass before in this situation? We desperately need a win, and you're trying to, and like, the whole point of this season, like, okay, you're not going to be as good as you expected, but maybe you can get Isaac Wilson a bunch of game reps, and then by 2 years down the road, by 2026, like, I think he could still be, Isaac Wilson could be one of the Big 12's better quarterbacks before the lumps he took as a guy maybe playing a bit earlier than ideal, but a guy clearly who has, like, you look at him and you understand why he was a 4-star recruit. Like, you see that, like, yeah, he's got the tools. Like, he's got some of the stuff that Zach Wilson did 4 or 5 years ago that made him such an intriguing college player, if not a surefire pro success. Like, that was a decision I appreciated. Also appreciated Utah not going for a couple different 4th and shorts during the period of the game where I thought they were running the ball pretty well. Like, appreciate it. Yeah, very much like their conservatism. I would also, if I was a Utah fan, be losing my mind. Like, really? We don't think we can get 2 or 3 yards? Like, Bernard was getting some yards against us. And that's not to in any way take a shot at the Cougar defensive performance. Again, I thought the guys really bounced back well. You really own, like, the play to Keefe for the first touchdown, and then the second touchdown, they had less than 30 yards to go. Like, I don't know, you really put that one on the defense when you're making them start that deep in your own territory. So a very good performance all around, but they were getting periodic rushing yards, and I was very happy when I saw the punt teams come out. I was like, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Dustin and I were talking, and we were sitting there like, because we've had some offensive calls on like 3rd down that have just kind of baffled my brain this year. You know, even this game, it was just kind of like, that's our play call on 3rd and 8.
It's a little conservative, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not somebody who likes to question. Like, there was a guy in front of me who, on that drive where we had the fumble and it was 3rd and 30, we ran the draw play and he like threw his hands up and he's like, "It started 30. Why are you running it?" And it's like, brother.
There, I get it. Yeah, it's just like, all right, let's not throw
But
it
like, there were some like 3rd and 4s where you're kind of like, "Hey, wait a minute. Why?" Xeon Chris designed run was getting stuffed a lot, but then Dustin goes, they're kind of doing the same thing with their play calling. It's kind of, why on 3rd down are you bringing in this freshman or this quarterback who doesn't have a college pass and you're making him throw the ball down the field 15 yards on his first pass? Like, why are you doing that? You know?
It's almost as if the mid-season offensive coordinator changed. I mean, it's almost as if there are some more fundamental problems there besides the offensive coordinator, which is quite often the case. Like, there's like, okay, the coordinator change, it might be just, you're getting a head start on something you were going to do at the end of the season anyway. But
yeah,
like it's more than just the person calling the plays. Like, it's easy as a fan to flatten it out to just like, oh, why isn't he just called the good ball? Like, usually there's something greater wrong though, whether that's a personnel problem or deficiency, whether that's, hey man, we installed, like, we really thought this was going to work. We just installed something that didn't turn out to fit our players as well. See Houston Cougar football's offense a decent amount of time from 2019 to 2023. If you want some real life examples of what that looks like. Big game from Kentrell Webb. Just vibes wise, I feel like I saw Kentrell Webb, number 8, like making more plays than he had before.
So, fun story about Kentrell Webb, just something kind of interesting, is when the first time we got stopped and it was inside the 1, you saw him come out and he was going hands over head, like doing the safety motion the whole time as everybody's walking onto the field. Like, there was the TV timeout and he's kind of getting everybody to gather around him and he's just doing the safety hand sign the whole time.
Love
and
it.
You just see him, like, he did it probably 4 times as they're running onto the field, like for their huddle. He's doing that, like, motherfuckers, we're getting this safety. And then arguably we got the safety and it didn't get called.
I mean, I'll just say about that, and I would be, if I was in stadium, I'd be like, how is that not? I want, call that critical. I want the crew to be absolutely certain. I want there to be just like, I want that to have absolutely no doubt. And when you really look at, he's really close. And but I wouldn't want that to be I don't want that to a call to be made in haste. I was complaining earlier about the holding call, and it's just like, well, you weren't really calling it any other time. Like, why did you choose a potentially game-changing play to be like, you know what? We're gonna make an example here. Like, I've seen worse. Like the Keith Cooper was just getting the shit held out of him by Utah O linemen on their first few series of the game. I mean, not just him, but like, and like now's the time you pick to decide, like, we're gonna make an example of somebody here.
Yeah.
But yeah, like at that point, like I again, if I was in stadium, I would have wanted that. I would have been like, he was out there, but like, you see the real close, and I would almost go so far as to say, I don't know if it's a conclusive, but you almost could even see a little sliver, like, on a screen. I don't think it's conclusive they stepped out, and maybe it's easier to say from the position of the fan of the team that won this game and didn't have that call play an outsized role in it, but I'd rather the crew be certain. I'd rather that call get made.
Right.
I'd rather a crew default to being like, you know what? Not sure I saw it. Can't call it. Not going to call a penalty on a 90% guess versus like
I didn't understand how it didn't get reviewed.
Yeah, I get it.
It
but
feels
also,
like something should have been reviewed.
God, dude, like, and I feel like you should empathize as there in person. Like, the review process, I'm not saying that I want to get rid of it. I'm not saying that it hasn't like led to a net good in terms of like overturning some absolute whoppers of calls. It is brutal for the live experience. Like, it sucks to just sit there like, okay, you've been watching football, a sport that already has a lot of stoppages, and then be like, all right, I'm gonna watch the guy in the striped shirt walk over to a little like viewfinder and stare at it for a while, and like, maybe the fact that he's reviewing it a while means my team's gonna get a call, and just like having a long break in a live experience that already has a lot of long breaks. That's all I'm saying. But again, you're the guy that's actually been to a U of H game 3 times this year. I'm the one who has not.
Dude, I will tell you right now, I will never complain about a review. Like, you're not going to be entertained 100% of the time, 100% of the moments that you're in the stadium. Sometimes the game is what's important. And we've had this discussion about other sports with other friends as well. the sport and getting it right is more important to me, and I don't ever want there to be like, oh man, we can't review this because it'll slow down the game or anything like that. I don't care if you review every play if it needed to be. Like
I think you would care if it was every play, but yeah, but
I think eventually
I get your larger
would,
point.
But like, yeah, I get calls like that right. Don't maybe, but to have the confidence that you didn't see it that on a play that is that important, I'm sorry, I disagree. Like, I understand that in that moment you want them to be 100%. They should technically be 100% on every call they make, right? And I know that's not the nature of human beings, right? But at the same time, we have a system that can assure that you are 100% right in a key moment, in something that could change the momentum of a game, could change the way the game swings. Why do we have a review if it's like, oh no, I just say, like, that's a big moment. And I didn't understand why Fritz didn't challenge it. I didn't understand. Maybe I was missing something in stadium, but, you know, I saw some of the screenshots, whatnot. Like, it looks like something that somebody should have said, let's at least take a look at it.
I'll just say this. As much as I can predict anything review does, which isn't perfect, there are many times where I'm just like, really? That's the conclusion we got to from this. So I'm certainly not batting 1,000 on predicting what review can and can't do. My opinion, they would have looked at it a while and been like, calling the field stands.
Yeah,
like, I really don't think there was
which again is okay with me. Like, yeah. I'm not saying
That's
that
fine.
They got the call wrong. Go look at it.
Yeah.
At least go look at it. You know,
I think I agree with that. Big game from Brandon Mack too. Career high 6 total tackles. Had one of your 2 sacks in this one. Was very, very much involved in this one. Somebody who, by necessity this year, like you lost Nelson Caesar to the pros. Like you lost, like you didn't have very many guys like for the pass rusher, and like a guy who, you know, you had I don't think it would have changed the outcome of that game, but you had that jump on 4th down against Oklahoma, like a low light of the season, to come out in this one and play, I think, an important part in what the front seven did this one. That was cool. Ajani Carter as well. Like, Ajani Carter finally got this crew to call holding, because just like the most blatant, if I hadn't seen it, I would have screamed, "Are you effing kidding me?" Right. I've hard cursed too many times. I'm trying to censor myself here, but got just like one of the more blatant holds you'll ever see a DB get done to them. I believe that was in the first half. Anthony Holmes too, very active. You wouldn't, I think, tell that from 2 total tackles, but was someone very much in the backfield with Keith Cooper, with Carlos Allen, with Brandon Mack in that front side. I think really doing good work against Utah. I see this game. I see an imperfect effort, but I just keep coming back to and I think the average fan does overstate like how, like, a team going, like, these are all Division I athletes, even in what you would call not ideal situations. These guys are competitors. Like, these, like, the difference between a guy not playing 100%, we've talked about this on here before, like the difference between a guy who's going all out and maybe like leaving something out there, it's pretty slight. Like, these guys are still just incredibly competitive, incredibly high level athletes, but you just see they'll want to on this team, and it's just off the charts. And I think I'm comfortable saying that it's like this team is in a better place than it is last year. Like, you saw this team last year have its moments. Like you saw a team playing out of its skin against the Longhorns last year, about 12 months ago, honestly, 12 months and a few days from today. But that's a week in, week out thing mostly with this team. It's not perfect. And that we've seen examples in the Cincy game and the game against Kansas last week where it's not all there. Like, this team, if this team doesn't bring close to its A effort, I think the floor's pretty low. Like, the floor is still, you're one of the worst P5 teams, but when this team plays well, when this team is able to stay in it, like, you see why this guy Willie Fritz has won all these places. You see a little buy-in, you see a level of competent football that I don't think we were seeing under the previous staff. I don't think we were seeing under the staff before that, to be quite frank. Might not even see, like, in the Herman staff the last half of the season, as he job shopped himself to various places in the latter stages of the 2016 season. Like,
yeah, you
were starting to see a foundation now on which, you you develop and evaluate on the offensive line, you develop and evaluate at the, backs and receivers. Like you keep Burnett and Sanford around in this program, let those guys develop into upperclassmen. You get maybe a more consistent offensive line in front of them, both in terms of creating a pass game that can take pressure off the run game and also giving them more consistently the kinds of holes we saw tonight and saw at times against TCU as well. Like you're just seeing what this program can be. And it's not there yet. And I don't think anyone realistically should have thought it was going to all be there this year. But I mean, I hate to have low expectations, Bobby, but the fact that this team is still mathematically alive to go to a bowl, it's not even yet like, oh, if we go 4-0, like, do I think we're going 3-1 at the end of the month? I don't think so. Like BYU is going to be challenging K-State, even though I think K-State I think K-State's a bit worse this year than they were last year, but they're still a very good team. They're still a team that you're going to have to play nearly a perfect game to beat. Like this team, it's not laughable this team can go bowling, Bobby. If I guessed, they probably will not. But the fact that we're here at the end of October, I think is a positive statement about the staff.
Yeah, I think, you kind of look at it and you go, Baylor, you feel like you got a really good shot at that game. You're probably going to drop BYU and K-State.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to be close. You got a chance to beat last year, and I think all off season my big thing was that we were going to see the same record, but we were going to see better football, and we are on pace to have a record, God willing, in that Baylor game. That would be great, and that would get us to the same amount of wins as we had last year. And I would say that even though we have the same record, what I kind of said preseason is kind of happening. We're going to have a better record, but we're going to have the same record, but we're going to look like a better football team. And that's what I wanted out of this year. And I told people going into the season to have low expectations because this team wasn't going to go bowling this year. And I've started to venture over to different Cougar websites. And, they love to talk about how the expectation was supposed to be bowl game this year. And I'm like, you guys are absolutely out of your minds. If you thought a bowl game was the expectation this year, I barely believe a bowl game is an expectation next year. I feel like that's a goal, not an expectation for next year. But again, the foundation is being laid. You're seeing the Cougars play the way that you want to see the Cougars play. Is it the most exciting football that I've ever laid my eyes on? No. I would much rather have the 2008 Cougar offense where we ran a bajillion points on the board, or the 2011 offense where we just go deep. That was way more exciting to watch, right? Winning games 70-14, that was a ton of fun to watch. But the thing I like more than any of it is winning. And if we can lay the foundation, and we got to take a couple of years, our TCU guest had it really good. We are not the kind of program that reloads every year in football. You're going to get it in cycles. Every 4 years, you're going to see something different with this team. When a recruiting class comes in every 4 years, you're going to get that one recruiting class every 4 years that was recruited off your good year, right? You have that big year where you're TCU, for example, and you go to the college football national championship game. You go to the playoff, you make the national championship game. 4 years after that, you have another good team. That's where, if we can pull that off, I'm very happy with that as a Cougar fan in terms of finances and everything that this program can do. And I really see that happening. I think 2 years from now, not next year, but the year after, we are really going to start seeing the payoff of this staff.
Because that's what made last year so discouraging, is that, 4-8 wasn't probably that far last year from where it was the first year in the Big 12, hadn't been an amazing year the year prior, and, had new faces in key spots, and you're just like, I'm just not sure about a lot of things. But it was just how discouraging, after you won that game against Baylor, where quite honestly, you played about the same as a just terrible 3-9 Baylor team. You were a nose better, and I'm sure, especially because you and Dustin were there, I would have enjoyed very much being there in person for Donovan Smith running it in on that 2-point conversion and being better, but you were one play away from losing to one of Baylor's worst teams since they hired Art
And
Briles
West Virginia.
17 years. And yeah, Hail Mary against West Virginia. I mean, this one was very close, but I think definitionally, both of the Big 12 wins you've gotten this year, TCU, of course, much more convincing win, a game you dominated statistically and by the eye test, every facet. Definitely that one. I'd argue this one as well, just because, like, even if Jack Martin doesn't hit that, obviously we're not feeling very great about Jack Martin not hitting that if that happens, if that's the reality that thankfully we're not living in. But at least that miss there, you're just talking about, okay, now we go to overtime and stuff like that. So, yeah. Bobby, any other stuff, because you were there in person, that you wanted to highlight? Any other stories before we wrap this up and let you go to bed here at the after midnight hour in Houston?
No, I think the biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from the game was Trill tenders, quite delicious.
Yeah, I remember that was Dustin's initial review too. And
it's a good tender. It's a solid tender.
That's good. I like that. Like, I know it hasn't always been perfect execution, but I like that the leadership here seems to keep trying like good, interesting stadium foods, not just the Airmark shit that it was so bad that I broke my vow earlier not to hard swear. So just my
feelings on Airmark. My feelings on Airmark.
Yeah, I think we feel pretty similar there. Just enjoy these moments. Like, this is going to be a season where the wins aren't going to be easy to come by. Enjoy this. Appreciate that this looks like it's going to be a better team at the end of the season than it was at the start. So thank you, those of you that continue to support what me and Bobby do. And he also says this every time we talks about it. By no exaggeration, you are the reason that we keep doing this, that we do an extra episode, that we go in on a week in, week out basis, that so many of you are willing to put financial support behind what we do. So very late hours, so I'm going to keep it abbreviated here, but of course, hit us up in the Patreon messages if that's how you want to communicate. SH Podcast on Twitter, podcast.beastguy.social if you want to talk to almost certainly Dustin, because I'm never going to forget the Beast Guy read, even here at this late hour. Bobby, sorry to keep you from that way, or shpodcast@gmail.com if you want to go a bit more of an old school method. No mailbox this time, but maybe Bobby and I will work on that someday. Probably not. Appreciate those of you that have listened. I hope you enjoyed the Cougar win as much as the two of us did, and look out for us in our regular spot on Tuesday. Bobby, what do we always say at the end here?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.